For 42 years, I kept a secret that could have saved my husband's life. It wasn't an affair. It wasn't a crime. It was something much simpler and, looking back now, much more devastating. I knew our sons were liars, and today, sitting in the Ya'afai, third pew of Westside Funeral Home, watching my husband Ernesto's closed casket draped in white lilies, feeling my phone vibrate with a message from a dead man, I realized that knowing the truth and doing nothing about it makes you just as guilty. Message was simple, 5 words that shattered my entire reality. Still alive. Trust no one. My name is Gloria Martinez. I'm 66 years old. I taught English literature at Martin Luther King Jr. High School for 38 years before retiring. And this is the story of how my husband faked his own death to expose our sons as murderers, and how I helped him destroy the family we built together. Because some families don't deserve to survive. The funeral home smelled of carnations and furniture polish, that sickly sweet combination that makes your stomach turn. December sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, casting red and blue shadows across the burgundy carpet. 73 people filled the pews behind me, their whispers creating a low hum like distant bees. I'm so glad you're here listening to this story. You know, when I decided to tell it, I wasn't sure anyone would believe that a 66-year-old retired teacher could be part of something this dark, this calculated. If you've ever felt betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you most, if you know what it's like to discover that your own children are monsters, leave a like on this video. While I continue, if you can subscribe to the channel, it would help me so much. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? I want to know how far these stories are reaching. Now, let me tell you exactly what I saw when I opened that text message. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. The screen brightness was turned down, but the words seemed to glow in the dim light of the funeral home. The number was blocked. No name. Just those 5 words that made my heart stop and restart in the same breath. I looked up at the casket. Ernesto's casket. The casket that supposedly held my husband's body after a sudden heart attack 3 days ago on December 15, 2024, at 3:47 in the morning. Except now, I knew it didn't. The casket was closed. Ernesto's cousin Miguel had suggested it, saying Ernesto wouldn't have wanted people to see him that way. At the time, I thought it was respectful. Now I understood it was part of the plan. A plan my husband had executed without telling me. My throat tightened. Not with grief this time, with something else, something colder and sharper. Because if Ernesto was alive, if he'd faked his own death, there was only one reason he would do something that extreme. Our sons had tried to kill him, and he was about to prove it. I forced myself to breathe normally, to keep my face in the same mask of dignified grief I'd been wearing for 3 days. Around me, people dabbed at their eyes with tissues. My sister Rosa sat to my left, gripping my hand. She had no idea that the corpse we were mourning was probably watching us from somewhere, very much alive. 10 feet in front of me, in the first pew on the right side, sat Carlos and Henrique, my sons. Carlos was 38, the older one. Dark. Suit from Men's Warehouse, probably bought on credit. Hair slicked back with too much gel, making him look like a character from a mob movie. He sat with his spine straight, hands folded in his lap, face arranged in an expression of solemn respect that would have fooled anyone who didn't know him. But I knew him. I knew that his law practice was $140,000 in debt to loan sharks who'd given him 1 month to pay or lose his kneecaps. I knew he'd been lying to his wife Sandra about it for 8 months, telling her the late nights were about building the firm, when really he was in illegal poker games trying to win back what he'd already lost. Henrique sat beside him, 35 years old, rumpled gray suit that didn't quite fit his softening middle. He kept pulling at his collar like it was choking him. Sweat beaded on his upper lip, despite the funeral home's aggressive air conditioning. Henrique owed $40,000 to a bookie in Buckhead. His online sports betting addiction had cost him his job at Delta Airlines, his apartment, and his dignity. He'd been living in our basement for 6 months, supposedly between opportunities. Between opportunities. That's what we called it when our children failed. Together, my sons owed $180,000 to people who solved debt problems with violence. And my husband's life insurance policy was worth $500,000. Our house in the Virginia Highland neighborhood was valued at $420,000. His retirement accounts held another $180,000. His collection of rare books, another $150,000. Total estate, $1,150,000 to be split between his widow and his 2 sons. Or, if the widow died shortly after, to be split only between the sons. The mathematics of murder are surprisingly simple. I'd been blind to it. Willfully, stupidly blind. Because what mother wants to believe her sons are capable of patricide? What wife wants to admit her children would kill their own father for money? But Ernesto had seen it. 3 months ago, in September, he'd started acting strange, paranoid. He installed a camera in our kitchen, hidden inside the smoke detector. He started recording conversations on his phone. He made me promise never to drink anything our sons brought to the house, never to eat food they prepared. They're planning something, he'd said one night in October, his voice low and urgent as we lay in bed. Gloria, I need you to trust me. Our boys aren't who we think they are. I'd laughed it off, called it retirement anxiety, told him he was watching too many crime documentaries. God forgive me, I'd laughed at him. Now, staring at that text message, I understood. Ernesto hadn't been paranoid. He'd been gathering evidence. And when he realized the threat was real, when he understood that our sons were actually going to kill him, he'd done something I never would have imagined. He'd killed himself first, or rather, he'd made them think he had. My phone buzzed again. Another text from the blocked number. Recording device in your purse, press side button 3 times to activate. Let them talk. I reached into my black leather purse slowly, carefully, like I was looking for a tissue. My fingers found the small rectangular device tucked into the interior pocket. It felt like a USB drive, cold and metallic. I pressed the side button 3 times. A tiny green light blinked once, then went dark. It was recording. Ernesto wanted me to gather evidence. At his own funeral. The service began. Pastor Williams walked to the podium, his Bible held against his chest like a shield. He spoke about Ernesto's life, 50 years as a mechanical engineer, devoted husband, loving father, pillar of the community, active member of Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church. All true, all irrelevant. Because the real Ernesto, the one who'd apparently orchestrated his own death and was now directing me like a puppet master from wherever he was hiding, that Ernesto was someone I didn't know at all. The service lasted 43 minutes. Hymns were sung. Eulogies were delivered. Carlos spoke about Dad's dedication to family. Henrique talked about the lessons he taught us about integrity. I watched them lie to a room full of mourners and felt something inside me turn to ice. When it ended, people filed out to their cars for the drive to the cemetery, but I noticed something. Carlos and Henrique hung back, waiting until most of the crowd had left. They stood near the casket, heads close together, voices low. I stayed in my pew, watching, waiting. My sister Rosa touched my arm. Gloria, we should go. I need a moment alone with him, I said, gesturing to the casket. Please, just 5 minutes. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Of course, I'll wait outside. She left. I was alone with my sons and my husband's empty casket. That's when I heard it. Carlos's voice, barely above a whisper, but the recording device in my purse caught every word. 3 more days and we can start the estate process. Then it's just a matter of getting Mom to sign the papers. Henrique's response was nervous, stuttering. What if she doesn't? What if she wants to wait? She'll sign. Carlos's voice was cold, matter-of-fact, the voice of a man who'd thought through every contingency. She's not exactly financially savvy, and if she hesitates, we'll explain that. The estate taxes are mounting, that we need to act quickly to preserve the assets. She'll believe it. And then we're free. Debts paid, fresh start. Maybe I'll take Sandra on that cruise she's been nagging about. Silence. Then Henrique's voice, even quieter. Do you think he knew? At the end? Knew what? That we were going to… You know. Carlos laughed. Actually laughed. The old man was taking blood pressure medication and drinking whiskey. When his heart gave out, nobody questioned it. Perfect crime, little brother. My hands clenched into fists. The recording device was capturing everything, every word, every casual admission. But there was something they didn't know yet, something I was only beginning to understand myself. Ernesto hadn't had a heart attack. He'd faked his death, which meant he'd known exactly what they were planning, and he had proof. We should go, Carlos said. People will start to wonder. Yeah. Henrique's voice was shaky. Hey, Carlos, do you ever think about Ricardo? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Ricardo, my first son, my oldest, he'd died 25 years ago, in 1999, when he was 17. A car accident, his Honda around a tree on Peachtree Road at 2 in the morning. Carlos had been 13 at the time. Don't, Carlos said sharply. Don't ever bring that up. I'm just saying maybe we shouldn't. Ricardo was an accident. This is different. This is survival. Now shut up and let's go to the cemetery before someone suspects something. Footsteps. The sound of the funeral home door opening and closing. They were gone. I sat in the pew, my entire body trembling, my mind replaying. What I'd just heard? Do you ever think about Ricardo? Don't ever bring that up. Ricardo was an accident. Oh God, oh my God, Ricardo's death hadn't been an accident. Carlos had killed him. My 13-year-old son had murdered my 17-year-old son, and I'd never known. My phone buzzed one more time. You heard them. Now you know what I've known for 3 months. The funeral is just the beginning. At the cemetery, stay close to the grave. Something is going to happen. Trust me. I love you. E. I stood on shaking legs, picked up my purse, walked toward the door on feet that felt like they belonged to someone else. Outside, December sunshine felt obscene. How could the world be so bright when everything I'd believed about my family was built on murder and lies? My sons had killed their brother. My sons had tried to kill their father, and now, somehow, my supposedly dead husband was about to strike back. I got into the limousine. Rosa held my hand. The funeral procession drove to Greenwood Cemetery, a 15-minute drive through Atlanta's northern suburbs. But my mind wasn't on the road. It was on a single, terrifying thought. If Ernesto was alive, if he'd faked his own death, then whoever was in that casket we were about to bury wasn't him. And if our sons had planned to kill him, if they thought they'd succeeded, then whatever Ernesto had planned for this moment was going to be spectacular and devastating and permanent. We arrived at the cemetery at 2:47 p.m. The casket was carried to the gravesite by 6 pallbearers, none of whom knew they were carrying an empty box. The crowd gathered around. 73 people in black, standing on winter-brown grass, watching a lie get lowered into the ground. Pastor Williams began the committal prayer, and that's when I saw him, a man in a dark coat and sunglasses, standing at the edge of the crowd, tall, silver hair, familiar posture, Ernesto my husband, very much alive. He raised one finger to his lips. Wait. Pastor Williams continued the committal prayer, his voice rising and falling in practiced cadences, but I didn't hear a word. My eyes were locked on the figure at the edge of the crowd. Ernesto stood perfectly still, like a statue among the mourners. The dark coat made him blend with the other attendees, but I would have recognized that posture anywhere. 42 years. Of marriage teaches you things. The way he held his shoulders, the slight tilt of his head when he was concentrating, the exact angle of his jaw. My husband was alive, and he was watching our sons. Carlos and Henrique stood on the opposite side of the grave, their faces arranged in expressions of grief that now looked like badly rehearsed theater. Carlos had his arm around Henrique's shoulders in a gesture of brotherly support that made my stomach turn. Henrique's eyes were red, but I couldn't tell if it was from actual tears or from the cold December wind that cut across the cemetery. The casket began, its descent into the earth. Mechanical pulleys lowered it inch by inch, while Pastor Williams intoned about dust and ashes and eternal rest. I thought about what was actually inside that box. A weighted dummy, sandbags, books from Ernesto's collection to give it the right heft? My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I pulled it out discreetly, shielding the screen with my hand. After ceremony, go home. Check basement storage. Red toolbox behind paint cans. Inside, laptop, 3 flash drives, file folder. Password is Ricardo1999. Watch everything, then wait for my call. Don't let them see you. Ricardo1999. Our dead son's name and the year he died. The year Carlos murdered him. Because that's what had happened, wasn't it? That accident 25 years ago wasn't an accident at all. And Ernesto had known. For how long? When had he figured it out? And why had he never told me? The questions multiplied in my mind like cancer cells, spreading and dividing until I couldn't think straight. I forced myself to focus. One step at a time. Get through this ceremony, go home, find the evidence, understand what I was dealing with, then decide what to do about my sons. The casket reached the bottom of the grave. Pastor Williams picked up a handful of dirt and dropped it onto the polished wood with a hollow thump. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. One by one, mourners filed past the grave, each adding their own handful of Georgia red clay. I waited my turn, my legs unsteady beneath me. When I reached the edge, I looked down into that hole and thought about all the lies buried there. Not Ernesto's body, just lies upon lies upon lies, compressed and condensed into 6 feet of earth. I threw my dirt and walked away. The reception was held at our house on Argonne Avenue, a 3-bedroom craftsman we'd bought in 1996 when the neighborhood was still. Affordable. Rosa had arranged everything, bless her. Sandwiches from Publix, sweet tea in plastic pitchers, a coffee maker gurgling in the corner of the kitchen. 73 people crammed into our living room and spilled onto the front porch, talking in hushed voices about what a good man Ernesto had been, how sudden it was, how Gloria must be devastated. Played my part, accepted condolences, thanked people for coming, pretended my world hadn't just shattered into pieces small enough to cut. Carlos and Henrique worked the room like politicians, shaking hands, accepting sympathy, playing the role of grieving sons with Academy Award-worthy performances. I watched them over the rim of my coffee cup and wondered how I'd ever thought they were good people. At 4:30 p.m., the last guest left. Rosa hugged me at the door. "Do you want me to stay? I can sleep in the guest room." "No," I said, perhaps too quickly. "I need some time alone, to process." She squeezed my hand. "Call me if you need anything. Anything at all." I waited until her car disappeared down the street. Then I turned to face my sons. They were in the kitchen, helping themselves to leftover sandwiches. Carlos leaned against the counter, tie loosened, looking more relaxed than he had all day. Henrique sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone. "I'm going to lie down," I announced. "It's been an exhausting day." Carlos looked up. "Of course, Mom. We'll clean up down here. You rest." Such concern, such filial devotion. I wanted to scream. Instead, I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, closed the door, and waited. I heard them talking in low voices, Heard the clink of dishes being loaded into the dishwasher. Heard Carlos's car start outside around 5:15 p.m., but I also heard footsteps in the basement. Henrique hadn't left. I moved to the top of the stairs, listening. He was down there, in the basement where he'd been living for 6 months. I heard drawers opening, the sound of papers rustling. What was he looking for? Then I heard his voice, talking to someone on the phone. Yeah, it's done. The old man's in the ground. Pause. No, she doesn't suspect anything. She's upstairs crying. Another pause. Carlos says we can start the paperwork Monday. Should have access to the accounts by end of next week. Longer pause. Listen, about the money I owe you. You're going to get paid, all of it. Just give me 10 days, I swear on my father's grave. He laughed at his own joke, swore on his father's grave, the father he'd tried to murder. I backed away from the stairs, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. I needed to get to that toolbox. I needed to see what Ernesto had found. But I couldn't do it while Henrique was down there. I went to my bedroom, closed the door, and genuinely tried to rest. My body was exhausted from 3 days of performing grief, 3 days of pretending I didn't know my sons were monsters. But my mind wouldn't stop spinning. At 7:30 p.m., I heard Henrique's footsteps on the stairs, his door closing. The sound of his television turning on, some basketball game with announcers shouting about three-pointers and defensive plays. I waited another 30 minutes. Then I crept downstairs. The basement door was next to the kitchen. I opened it slowly, testing each step for creaks as I descended. The basement was partially finished, divided into Henrique's living area on one side and storage on the other. His door was closed, light visible beneath it, television volume loud enough to cover any sound I might make. I moved to the storage area. Paint cans lined one shelf. Behind them, partially hidden by a drop cloth, was a red metal toolbox I'd never noticed before. I pulled it out. Heavy. Locked with a combination padlock. I tried Ricardo 1999. The lock clicked open. Inside was exactly what Ernesto had promised. A laptop. 3 flash drives, each labeled with dates. A manila folder stuffed with papers. I couldn't risk taking it all upstairs. Instead, I opened the laptop right there, sitting on the concrete floor between boxes of Christmas decorations and old tax returns. The screen came to life. Password prompt, Ricardo 1999. The desktop loaded. One folder in the center of the screen labeled Evidence. I clicked it open. 63 files, audio recordings, video files. Scanned documents, photographs. I clicked on the first audio file, dated November 26, 2024. Thanksgiving Day. Just 3 weeks ago. Ernesto's voice came through the laptop speakers, quiet and clear. This is November 26, 2024, approximately 10:47 p.m. I've placed a recording device inside the kitchen. They think I'm asleep upstairs. Then other voices. My sons. Carlos. He takes the blood pressure medication every morning. Metoprolol, 100 milligrams. Henrique. So? Carlos. So it's a beta blocker. Slows the heart rate. If we increase his dose gradually over the next 2 weeks, his heart rate drops too low. Add alcohol to the mix, which he drinks every night, and his system can't compensate. Heart stops. Looks like natural cardiac arrest in a 67-year-old man with hypertension. Silence. Then Henrique's voice, shaky. You're talking about killing him. Carlos. I'm talking about accelerating an inevitable process. Dad's not healthy. This just speeds things up and solves both our problems. Henrique. How do we increase his dose without him knowing? Carlos. His pills are in the bathroom cabinet. We replace them. I've already got a contact who can make pills that look identical but contain 250 milligrams instead of 100. We swap them out this weekend while he's at church. Within 2 weeks, his heart gives out. Clean. Untraceable. Henrique. What about Mom? Carlos. What about her? Henrique. Does she get suspicious? Carlos, laughing. Mom, she barely knows what day it is. She'll be devastated, sure, but suspicious? No. And if she is, well, grief makes people confused. Maybe she needs to go somewhere quiet for a while, somewhere she can rest and recover. Henrique. You mean like a nursing home? Carlos. I mean like anywhere that isn't here, managing Dad's estate. The house alone is worth over $400,000. His retirement accounts, another $180,000. Life insurance, $500,000. His book collection, we can sell to that dealer in Decatur for at least $150,000. We're talking over $1 million, Henrique. Split 3 ways if Mom's in the picture. Split 2 ways if she's not. The recording continued. They discussed details, timelines, how to fake grief at the funeral, how to handle the estate paperwork, how to pay off their debts and start fresh. They planned our father's murder the way other people plan dinner parties. I sat on that basement floor, listening to my sons plot patricide, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. This wasn't shock anymore. This wasn't even grief. This was rage, cold, focused, clarifying rage. I clicked on the next file. Another recording, dated December 1st, 2024. This one was video. The footage showed our bathroom. The camera must have been hidden in the light fixture above the sink. In the video, Carlos entered, looked around to make sure he was alone, then opened the medicine cabinet. He took out Ernesto's pill bottle, dumped the contents into his pocket, and replaced them with pills from a different bottle. The timestamp showed 7:23 a.m., a Sunday. We'd been at early mass. The video continued. Carlos carefully adjusted the bottle to the exact position it had been before, wiped his fingerprints off with a tissue, then left. I clicked on the third file. A scanned document, a text message chain between Carlos and someone named DM. The messages were explicit. Carlos. Need pills, beta blockers, 250 milligrams. Look like metoprolol, 100 milligrams. Can you do it? DM. Risky. What's this for? Carlos. Better you. Don't know. How much? DM. $2,000. And if anyone asks, we never talked. Carlos. Done. Thursday? DM. Thursday. The date on those messages was November 21st, 2024, 5 days before Thanksgiving, 10 days before Carlos poisoned our father's medication. Except Ernesto hadn't taken the poisoned pills because he'd known they were coming. I clicked through more files. Ernesto had documented everything. Bank statements showing Carlos's gambling debts, screenshots of Henrique's sports betting losses, photos of threatening letters from loan sharks, recordings of more conversations, each one more damning than the last. In one, recorded December 10th, Carlos told Henrique, he's been looking weak, dizzy. I think it's working. Maybe another week. In another, recorded December 13th, Henrique asked, what if Mom asks for an autopsy? Carlos responded, she won't. And if she does, what will it show? An old man with heart disease who died of a heart attack. There's no test for took too much of his prescribed medication. They'd thought of everything, except for the possibility that their father was smarter than them. The final file in the folder was a video, dated December 15th, 2024, the day Ernesto died. I clicked it open. The video showed our bedroom. The camera must have been hidden in the bookshelf that faced our bed. In the footage, Ernesto was alone, speaking directly to the camera. If you're watching this, Gloria, then my plan worked. Today is December 15th. It's 2:30 in the morning. In approximately 1 hour, I'm going to fake my death. Dr. Marcus Chen, an old friend from college, is helping me. He'll sign the death certificate. The body in the casket is a medical training. Dummy weighted to approximate my body mass. I've arranged everything. He paused, his face serious in the dim light of the bedroom lamp. I know this seems extreme. I know you're probably angry that I didn't tell you. But Gloria, our sons tried to kill me. Carlos poisoned my medication. He thought I was taking those pills, but I've been disposing of them for 2 weeks. I replaced them with placebos. I let them think I was getting sicker. I played the role they expected. His voice cracked slightly. And I investigated. The recordings you're listening to, the documents you're seeing, this is just the beginning. There's more. So much more. Carlos didn't just try to kill me, Gloria. He killed Ricardo 25 years ago. I have proof. I've always had proof. And I've spent 25 years trying to convince myself I was wrong, trying to find any explanation other than the truth. But I wasn't wrong. Tears rolled down his face in the video. Our 13-year-old son murdered our 17-year-old son because Ricardo found out Carlos had stolen $3,000 from my wallet. Ricardo confronted him, threatened to tell us. So Carlos cut the brake lines on Ricardo's car, made it look like drunk driving. And I knew. I knew within a week. I found the tools in Carlos's closet. I found oil on his clothes. And I said nothing. Because what father wants to believe his child is capable of that? He wiped his eyes. But I can't stay silent anymore. Carlos has become what I always feared. And Henrique is following in his footsteps. So I'm going to do what I should have done 25 years ago. I'm going to stop them. I'm going to expose them. And I'm going to make sure they can never hurt anyone again. The video ended. I sat in the darkness of the basement, the laptop screen glowing in front of me, and understood the full scope of what Ernesto had planned. This wasn't just about proving Carlos and Henrique tried to kill him. This was about punishing them for killing Ricardo. This was about 25 years of guilt and silence finally demanding justice. My phone buzzed. Another text from the blocked number. You've seen enough. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., meet me at the place where we had our first date. Come alone. Bring the flash drives. We finish this together. E, the place where we had our first date. Piedmont Park. The bench near the lake. I closed the laptop. Put everything back in the toolbox. Hid it behind the paint cans exactly as I'd found it. Then I climbed the stairs back to my empty bedroom and lay awake until dawn, thinking about my sons, my husband, my dead son Ricardo, and the terrible arithmetic of family that never quite adds up the way you think it will, because I'd spent 66 years believing love was enough. But sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes you need justice. And sometimes justice looks like a dead man rising from his grave to drag his sons to hell. Didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Carlos's 13-year-old face. I saw Ricardo's Honda wrapped around that oak tree on Peachtree Road. I saw 25 years of Christmas dinners and birthday parties and graduation ceremonies, all of them built on a foundation of murder and lies. At 5:47 a.m., I gave up trying. I showered, dressed in jeans and a sweater, made coffee I didn't drink. Henrique's door remained closed downstairs. I could hear him snoring through the floorboards, deep, satisfied snores of someone who thought he'd gotten away with murder. At 8:15 a.m., I left the house. I drove my 2019 Toyota Camry through empty Sunday morning streets, past churches filling with early worshipers, past joggers in Piedmont Park, already running their morning miles. I parked near the lake entrance at 8:52 a.m. The park was beautiful, in the weak December sunlight. Bare trees stretched skeletal branches against a pale blue sky. The lake reflected clouds like a mirror. Ducks paddled near the shore, oblivious to human drama. Our bench was still there. The same wooden bench where Ernesto had taken me on May 3, 1982, 42 years ago. We'd been introduced by mutual friends at a Cinco de Mayo party. He was 31, a mechanical engineer with a shy smile and careful hands. I was 24, a new teacher, nervous about everything. He'd brought a picnic, sandwiches from a deli, strawberries, a bottle of wine we drank from plastic cups. We'd sat on this bench and talked for 4 hours about books and music and whether it was possible to be happy in a world with so much pain. I'd thought I knew him completely by the end of that afternoon. I'd been wrong. At exactly 9 a.m. he appeared. Ernesto walked across the grass toward me, hands in the pockets of a gray jacket I'd never seen before. His silver hair was longer than it had been at the funeral, like he'd let it grow for weeks. He'd grown a short beard, just a few days of stubble. It made him look like a stranger, or maybe like the man he'd always been, hidden beneath the version I thought I knew. For a long moment, we didn't speak. We just sat there, husband and wife, stranger and stranger, watching ducks paddle in circles. Finally he said, "I'm sorry." 2 words, inadequate for 25 years of secrets. "You should be," I replied. My voice was steadier than I expected. "You let me believe you were dead. You let me grieve. You let me stand at your grave and throw dirt on an empty casket while our sons congratulated themselves on murdering you. I know. And worse than that, Ernesto, worse than all of that, you knew Carlos killed Ricardo. For 25 years, you knew, and you never told me." He flinched like I'd struck him. I couldn't prove it. Bullshit. The word came out sharp and hard. You had evidence. You just showed it to me. You had tools. You had oil-stained clothes. You had suspicions. You had everything except the courage to face the truth. He was 13 years old, Gloria. And Ricardo was 17. He was our son, too. He deserved justice. My voice echoed across the lake. A jogger passing nearby glanced over, concerned. I lowered my volume, but not my intensity. You chose Carlos over Ricardo. You chose the living son over the dead one. And that choice, that cowardice, created the monster who tried to kill you. You made Carlos believe he was untouchable. That family loyalty meant protecting murderers. And now Henrique thinks the same thing. Ernesto's eyes filled with tears. You're right. You're absolutely right. And I've lived with that guilt every single day for 25 years. Every time I looked at Carlos, I saw what I'd created. Every time I looked at you, I thought about the truth I was hiding. It's been a cancer, Gloria, eating me from the inside. Then why not tell me? Why not tell the police? Because I loved him. His voice broke. He was my son, my baby boy. And I thought, maybe if I just watched him, guided him, kept him close, he wouldn't do it again. I thought I could fix him. You can't fix a murderer by pretending he's not one. I know that now. We sat in silence. A cold wind blew across the lake, carrying the smell of dead leaves and winter coming. Finally, I asked, "So what's your plan? You've faked your death. You've gathered evidence. What happens next?" Ernesto reached into his jacket and pulled out a flash drive. Everything is on here. Not just the recordings from the last 3 weeks. Everything. Photos from 1999 showing the brake fluid on Carlos's clothes. Receipts for tools that match the cuts on Ricardo's brake lines. A written confession from Tommy Alvarez, Carlos's best friend in middle school, who saw Carlos in the garage the night before Ricardo died. Tommy kept quiet because he was scared, but he's willing to testify now. He's lived with the guilt for 25 years, too. He handed me the flash drive. It was warm from his body heat. "There's more," Ernesto continued. "I hired a private investigator 6 months ago. Robert Keller, former FBI, the best. He's been tracking Carlos's movements, his finances, his communications. And he found something even I didn't expect." "What?" "Carlos has been planning your death too." The world tilted. The bench felt suddenly unstable beneath me, like it might collapse and drop me into the earth. "What are you talking about?" Ernesto pulled out his phone. Opened an email. Showed me the screen. It was a message from someone named Sandra Reeves. To Carlos, dated December 8th, 2024, exactly 1 week before Ernesto's death. The subject line read, "Life insurance." Quote, "I read the message. Carlos, I got the quote you asked for. $500,000 policy on your mother, Gloria Martinez, age 66, generally. Healthy, Premium would be $3,200 annually. But I have to ask, why would you need life insurance on your mom? You're not financially dependent on her. This seems unusual. Call me. Sandra Carlos's response, same day. Sandra, it's a smart financial move. Mom's getting older. If something happened to her suddenly, there would be funeral costs, estate settlement fees, etc. This just ensures we're covered. Can you process it this week? I'll handle the premium payments. Sandra's response, I processed it. But Carlos, I'm your wife. Don't lie to me. What's really going on? No response from Carlos after that. I looked up at Ernesto. He took out a life insurance policy on me? Without your knowledge, he forged your signature on the application. Sandra works for Nationwide Insurance. She processed it because he told her you'd agreed. When she got suspicious, he told her you were showing signs of dementia, and he was trying to protect the family assets. My hands were shaking. When does the policy go into effect? December 18th, 2024. 3 days from now. 3 days. Carlos had planned it perfectly. Wait until Ernesto was dead and buried. Wait until the life insurance on me went into effect. Then arrange an accident. Make it look like grief and confusion. A fall down the stairs, a medication error, a car accident. I would die, and my sons would collect $500,000 on top of the $1.25 million estate. That's why I had to fake my death, Ernesto said quietly. I needed them to think they'd succeeded with me. I needed to see what they'd do next. And I needed time to gather evidence that would stand up in court. Not just recordings, Gloria. Physical proof, financial trails, witnesses, everything a prosecutor needs to put them away for 25 years to life. Do you have it? Everything. You need? Almost. There's one more piece. The most important piece. What? I need them to try to kill you. The words hung in the air between us like poison gas. Excuse me? Ernesto turned to face me fully. I need them to make an attempt on your life. Something clear, something undeniable, something the police can witness and document. Otherwise, everything I have is circumstantial. The recordings can be dismissed as out of context. The life insurance can be explained as a son trying to help his aging mother. The evidence from Ricardo's death is 25 years old and can be challenged. But if we catch them in the act of attempted murder, if we have witnesses and physical evidence, then everything else becomes part of a pattern. A lifetime of violence and manipulation. The prosecution can use it all. You want to use me as bait. I want to give you the choice. He reached out and took my hand. His fingers were cold. I can't make you do this. It's dangerous. Even with police protection, even with me watching every moment, there's risk. But Gloria, this is our chance. Our only chance. To get justice for Ricardo. To stop Carlos and Henrique before they hurt anyone else. To end this. I thought about Ricardo. About his smile. About how he'd wanted to be a doctor. About how he'd been saving money from his part-time job at CVS to buy a used car, only to be killed in that same car by his own brother. I thought about 25 years of not knowing. 25 years of thinking it was an accident. 25 years of comforting Carlos when he cried about losing his brother, never knowing those tears were lies. I thought about Henrique, learning from Carlos that family meant covering up, crimes, that love meant protecting murderers, that loyalty was more important than truth. What do I have to do? I asked. Ernesto squeezed my hand. First, we need to go see Robert Keller. He's waiting for us at his office. He'll explain the operational details, the safety protocols, the legal framework. Then we need to get you wired. Audio and video recording devices, small enough that Carlos and Henrique won't notice. And then you need to go home and act like everything is normal. What will they do? Based on what Keller has observed, they're planning to act tomorrow night. December 16th, they'll come to the house. They'll say they want to talk about the estate, about Dad's wishes, about moving forward, and then they'll try to convince you to take something. A pill for your nerves, a drink to help you sleep. Something with a sedative in it, enough to make you disoriented. And then they'll stage an accident. The cold wind cut through my sweater. I shivered, but not from the temperature. Where will you be? In the house, hidden. I've been living in the attic for the past 3 days, Gloria. There's a crawl space above the guest bedroom that connects to a ventilation shaft overlooking the living room. I can see and hear everything, and Keller will be outside with 2 plainclothes police officers. The moment they try to harm you, we intervene. And if something goes wrong, it won't. But if it does, he was quiet for a moment. Then I'll die for real this time, protecting you. Because that's what I should have done 25 years ago when Carlos first became a killer. I should have protected Ricardo. I should have protected our family. I failed then. I won't fail again. We sat on that bench for another 10 minutes. Not talking, just holding hands like we had 42 years ago when the world was simpler and love seemed like enough. Finally, Ernesto stood. Keller's office is in Buckhead. We should go. I followed him to his car, a rented Honda CR-V I'd never seen before. Everything about him was unfamiliar now. New car, new beard, new life built on secrets I was only beginning to understand. Robert. Keller's office was on the 18th floor of a glass tower on Peachtree Road. We took the elevator up in silence. Ernesto knocked 3 times on a door labeled RK Investigations, Private. The man who opened it was in his mid-50s, built like a linebacker, with salt and pepper hair cut military short and eyes that evaluated me in about 2 seconds. Mrs. Martinez, he said, extending a hand. Robert Keller. I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. His office was sparse. Desk covered with photographs and documents connected by red string like something from a crime drama. On that wall was my family's life, dissected and displayed, photos of Carlos at various ages. Ricardo's accident scene photos that made my stomach lurch, bank statements, phone records, surveillance images of Carlos meeting with loan sharks, screenshots of Henrique's betting accounts showing losses of $47,342 over 18 months, and in the center, a timeline. 999. Ricardo Martinez murdered. Breakline sabotage. 2008. Carlos graduates law school. Student loans. $160,000. 2012. Carlos marries Sandra Reeves. 2015-2018. Carlos develops gambling addiction. 2019. Henrique fired from Delta. Embezzlement suspicion, not prosecuted. 2020. Henrique moves into parents' basement. 2022. Carlos's debts reach $140,000. 2024. Nov 21. Carlos acquires poison pills. 2024. Nov 26. Carlos and Henrique discuss murder plan. Recorded. 2024. Deck 1. Carlos swaps Ernesto's medication. Video evidence. 2024. Deck 8. Carlos takes out insurance policy on Gloria. 2024. Deck 15. Ernesto fakes death. 2024. Deck 16. Predicted attempt on Gloria's life. Keller gestured to the wall. This is what we're dealing with, Mrs. Martinez. A pattern of escalating criminal behavior spanning 25 years. Carlos started with fratricide at age 13. He's refined his methods since then. He's patient. He's careful. He's intelligent, which makes him extremely dangerous. You think he'll really try to kill me tomorrow? I don't think, Mrs. Martinez. I know. I've been monitoring his communications. This morning at 6:23 a.m. he sent a text to Henrique. I'll show you. He pulled up an image on his computer, a screenshot of a text conversation. Carlos. Tomorrow night. 7 p.m. We go to Mom's. Tell her we need to talk about funeral expenses. I'll bring the Xanax dissolved in wine. Henrique, you bring the paperwork for her to sign. Power of attorney, access to Dad's accounts, everything. We get her to drink. She gets confused. She falls down the stairs. Tragic accident. Widow dies of grief 4 days after husband. Very believable. Henrique. What if she doesn't drink? Carlos. She will. I'll tell her dad would have wanted us to toast his memory. She's sentimental, she'll do it. And if she doesn't, we'll find another way. This ends tomorrow, little brother. One way or another. I read it 3 times. My own son, planning my death in text messages, like he was planning a dinner reservation. How did you get these? I asked. I have access to Henrique's phone. He's careless with security. Carlos is smarter, but Henrique is the weak link. He uses predictable passwords, leaves his phone unlocked. I've been monitoring his messages for 6 weeks. Keller opened a drawer and pulled out what looked like a small brooch, the kind you'd pin to a jacket. This is a camera and microphone. It'll record everything in 4K video with crystal clear audio. You'll wear it tomorrow when they come to the house. He handed me a second device, this one looking like a pen. Backup recording device. Keep it in your shirt pocket. Between these two, we'll have redundant evidence of everything they say and do. And you'll be outside? With Detective Sarah Chen and Officer Marcus Rodriguez from Atlanta PD. They're already briefed on the situation. The moment Carlos or Henrique make a move to harm you, we come through the door. They'll be arrested for attempted murder, and once we have them in custody, the DA can build the full case using all the evidence we've compiled. What about Ernesto? I asked. When does he come back from the dead? Keller glanced at Ernesto. That's the tricky part. Legally speaking, your husband faked his death, which isn't a crime in itself, but it involves falsified medical documents, which is. Dr. Chen, who signed the death certificate, could lose his license. We're working with the DA's office on immunity deals. Ernesto will have to answer for his actions, but given the circumstances, attempted murder of a spouse, he'll likely face minimal consequences. Probation, maybe a fine. The prosecutor wants the sons, not the father. When will you come back? I asked Ernesto directly. After they're arrested, he said. I'll emerge from the attic when the police are there. I'll make a statement, I'll explain everything, and then I'll face whatever consequences come. But Gloria, I need you to understand something. Even if I go to prison for this, even if I lose everything, it's worth it. Because Ricardo deserves justice, and you deserve safety, and our sons deserve to be stopped. I looked at this man I'd been married to for 42 years, this stranger with secrets and pain and guilt that had eaten him alive for a quarter century. Okay, I said. I'll do it. I'll be your bait. I'll help you catch them. Keller nodded, satisfied. Good. Let's go over the operational plan one more time. Tomorrow, December 16th, 2024, you'll spend the day at home, acting normally. At 7:09 p.m., Carlos and Henrique will arrive. You'll let them in. You'll act grieving but composed. When they offer you wine, you'll pretend to drink it, but you'll actually dispose of it. There's a plant near the couch. Pour it there when they're not looking. You'll pretend the sedative is working. Act confused, disoriented. When they try to move you toward the stairs, that's when we come in. What if they get violent before you can intervene? Ernesto will be in the attic with a phone. If at any moment you say the safe word, Ricardo, he'll call 911 immediately and come down to help you. We'll be through the door in under 30 seconds. But Mrs. Martinez, I have to be honest with you. There's a window of vulnerability, maybe 15-20 seconds, where you'll be alone with them and they might become physically aggressive. Can you handle that? I thought about Ricardo, lying in a hospital morgue 25 years ago. I thought about Ernesto, spending a quarter century consumed by guilt. I thought about my life, built on a foundation of lies and murder. Yes, I said, I can handle it. We spent another hour going over details. Keller gave me the recording devices and showed me how to activate them. He gave me a burner phone with his number programmed in, along with Detective Chen's. He made me practice the plan 3 times, correcting my mistakes, ensuring I understood every step. At noon, Ernesto drove me back to Piedmont Park, where my car was waiting. Before I got out, he said, Gloria, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I've destroyed your trust, maybe permanently. But I need you to know that everything I've done, every lie I've told, every secret I've kept, it's all been to protect you. I failed, Ricardo. I won't fail you. I looked at him, really looked at him, at the lines around his eyes, carved deeper by 25 years of secrets. At the gray in his hair that had come too early, stress turning him silver before his time. At the hands that had held me for 4 decades, hiding terrible knowledge all the while. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said honestly. I don't know if our marriage survives this. But I know one thing. We're going to stop them. We're going to get justice for Ricardo. And then we're going to figure out who we are to each other. If anything at all. He nodded. That's fair. That's more than fair. I drove home alone. Henrique's car was in the driveway. Inside, I found him in the kitchen, making a sandwich. Hey, Mom, he said casually, like he hadn't been planning my murder via text message 6 hours earlier. Where were you? Grocery store, I lied smoothly. We're out of milk. I held up a gallon I'd bought on the way home, stopping at Publix specifically to make the lie work. Oh, thanks. Hey, Carlos and I were thinking we should come by tomorrow night, around 7, to talk about Dad's estate, about what happens next. Is that okay? My heart hammered, but I kept my face neutral. Of course. That's probably smart. We should start sorting through things. Great. See you tomorrow then. He went back downstairs, sandwich in hand, whistling. Whistling. I put away the groceries with shaking hands. Then I went upstairs to my bedroom, closed the door, and finally let myself cry. Not for my husband who'd lied to me for 25 years, not for my sons who'd become monsters, but for Ricardo, who died at 17, who'd never gotten to be, a doctor who'd never gotten justice until now. Tomorrow night, I would give him that justice. Tomorrow night, I would look my sons in the eyes and let them try to kill me, and then I would watch them burn. Because some families don't deserve to survive, and some mothers have to kill their sons to save their souls. Not with a weapon, but with the truth. December 16th, 2024. The day I would let my sons try to kill me. I woke at 5:30 a.m., though I'd barely slept. My bedroom felt like a tomb, airless and suffocating. I showered, dressed in a simple gray sweater and black pants, dark colors for dark work. In the mirror, I looked older than 66. Grief ages you, even when it's performed rather than felt. At 6:15 a.m., my phone buzzed. Text from Keller. Devices are active. Testing audio. Say something. I spoke to the empty bedroom. Testing. This is Gloria Martinez, December 16th, 6:15 a.m. Response came 30 seconds later. Perfect. Video clear. Audio crystal. We're in position outside. Chen and Rodriguez are in an unmarked van across the street. I'm monitoring from the command center. Remember, safe word is Ricardo. Say it and we come immediately. You're not alone. But I was alone. Alone in a way that went deeper than physical presence. Alone with the knowledge that my children were monsters. Alone with the memory of a son dead 25 years, another son hiding in my attic, and 2 more sons coming tonight to murder me. How does a mother survive that kind of alone? She doesn't survive it. Henrique came upstairs. I was in the kitchen, making coffee I wouldn't drink, toast I wouldn't eat. Performance of normalcy. Morning, Mom, he said. His voice was too cheerful, forced brightness that made my skin crawl. How'd you sleep? Not well, I said honestly. I keep expecting to hear your father's footsteps. Guilt flickered across his face. Real guilt? Or rehearsed guilt? With Henrique, I could never tell anymore. Yeah, me too, it's weird, him being gone. Not gone, I thought. Hiding in the attic above your head, listening to every word you say. Carlos and I are still coming by tonight, Henrique continued. Around 7, to go over the estate stuff. Remember, I'll make coffee. Actually, Carlos is bringing wine. He thought we could toast Dad. You know, celebrate his life. The poisoned wine. The sedative that would make me disoriented enough to fall down the stairs. all planned out in text messages that Keller had captured. "That's thoughtful," I said, my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest. "Your father would have liked that." Henrique nodded, satisfied. He grabbed a bagel and went back downstairs. The day crawled by like something wounded. I cleaned the house, a ridiculous gesture considering what was about to happen. I vacuumed carpets that might have my blood on them in 12 hours. I dusted furniture that police would photograph as a crime scene. I arranged couch pillows that would be evidence of attempted murder. At 3:00 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Keller. Final check. Cameras working? Audio working? I went to the bathroom, spoke quietly. "Yes, everything's working. I'm ready." "You don't have to do this. We can arrest them based on the texts. It won't be as strong a case, but it would be enough." "No," I said firmly. "We do this right. We get them in the act. We make it undeniable." "Okay. Remember the plan. Pretend to drink. Pour it in the plant. Act confused. When they move you toward the stairs, we come in. 30 seconds maximum from entry to subduing them. You can do this." I know. But my hands were shaking when I hung up. At 6:30 p.m., I pinned the brooch camera to my sweater. The pen recorder went in my shirt pocket. I looked like a normal, grieving widow. No one would see the technology that would document my son's attempt to murder me. At 6:47 p.m., headlights swept across the living room window. Carlos's BMW in the driveway. This was it. I opened the door before they could knock. Carlos stood on the porch holding a bottle of red wine, expensive looking, with a label I didn't recognize. Henrique stood behind him, carrying a leather folder, bulging with papers. "Mom," Carlos said, stepping forward to hug me. I let him, feeling his arms around me, wondering how these same arms had cut Ricardo's brake lines 25 years ago. "How are you holding up?" "One day at a time," I said, the script of widows everywhere. They came inside. Carlos went directly to the kitchen, familiar with every cabinet, every drawer. He found wine glasses, filled 3 of them. The wine was dark red, almost black in the dim kitchen light. He carried 2 glasses back to the living room where Henrique and I were sitting on the couch. Handed one to me, kept one for himself. "Henrique doesn't drink," Carlos explained, though I hadn't asked. "But the 3 of us, we should toast Dad, honor his memory." I held the glass, feeling its weight. Somewhere in that wine was Xanax, ground up and dissolved, enough to make me dizzy, disoriented, easy to position at the top of the stairs. Carlos raised his glass. "To Ernesto Martinez, a good father, a good husband, a good man who raised his sons right." The lie was so audacious I almost laughed. Almost said, "You murdered your brother and tried to murder your father, and now you're murdering me. How did Dad raise you right?" But I didn't. I raised my glass, clinked it against Carlos's, brought it to my lips, and drank nothing. I mimed swallowing, keeping my throat closed. Let a tiny amount touch my lips, but no more. Lowered the glass and smiled sadly. "He would have liked this," I said. "The 3 of us together, remembering him." "To Dad," Henrique echoed, though he had no glass. Carlos drank deeply from his own. Wine. Was it the same wine he'd given me? Or had he poured his from a different bottle, one without sedatives? I couldn't tell. "Mom," Carlos said, settling into the armchair across from me. "We need to talk about practical things. I know it seems too soon, but there are deadlines, estate taxes, account access, the house." "I understand," I said. Took another fake sip of wine. This time, I let a bit more touch my lips, then casually reached over to water the potted ficus. Tree beside the couch. Poured maybe an ounce into the soil. The tree would probably die, but I'd be alive. "The thing is," Carlos continued, "Dad had substantial assets, over $1 million when you count everything, but it's all locked up. until we process the estate. We need your signature on some documents, power of attorney, account transfers. Standard stuff. Henrique opened the leather folder, pulled out a stack of papers, at least 20 pages. It's complicated, he said apologetically. Lots of legal language. But basically, you're just authorizing us to handle the financial stuff. So you don't have to worry about it. So I don't have to worry about it. Translation. So you can steal everything while I'm dead. That makes sense, I said. Took another fake sip. Poured another ounce into the plant. The wine was now half gone, and I'd consumed maybe a tablespoon total. Do I need to read all of it? We can go through it together, Carlos said. But his eyes were on my wine glass, measuring how much I'd drunk, calculating how long until the drug took effect. I forced myself to take a real sip this time. Just one. Barely a mouthful. The wine tasted expensive, rich, with an undertone of something bitter. The Xanax. I swallowed it. 2 milligrams, maybe 3, based on the bitterness. Enough to make me drowsy if I'd drunk the whole glass. Not enough to affect me from one sip. But I had to act like it was. I blinked slowly. Wow, this wine is strong. I'm not used to drinking. It's a Cabernet, Carlos said. 15% alcohol. Do you want some water? No, I'm fine. Just a little lightheaded. I haven't eaten much today. Carlos and Henrique exchanged a glance, the predator's glance, the calculation of when to strike. Maybe you should lie down, Mom, Henrique suggested. His voice was concerned, caring, the voice of a dutiful son. If you didn't know he was planning your murder, you'd think he genuinely cared. I'm okay. Let's just do the paperwork. The sooner we handle this, the sooner we can move forward. My voice slightly slurred. Not drunk, but affected. Vulnerable. Carlos pulled out a pen. Okay, first document is the power of attorney. Sign here. He pointed to a signature line. I held the pen, my hand trembling deliberately. Signed my name, Gloria Martinez. The signature was shaky, like an old woman struggling with motor control. Good, Carlos said. Next one. This authorizes us to access Dad's retirement accounts. Sign here. Another signature. This one even shakier. We went through 7 documents. With each one I made my signature worse, my hand less steady. I slumped against the couch, let my head loll slightly. Mom? Henrique said. Are you okay? Just tired. So tired. Maybe I should go upstairs, lie down. That's a good idea, Carlos said quickly, too quickly. Come on, let's help you to bed. They both stood, moved toward me. Carlos took one arm, Henrique the other. They lifted me from the couch and started walking me toward the stairs. This was the moment. This was the kill zone. They would position me at the top of the stairs, give me a push, make it look like I'd fallen in a sedative-induced haze. My heart was hammering so hard I thought they must hear it. We reached the base of the stairs, started climbing. 1 step. 2 steps. 3. At the 6th step, I deliberately stumbled. Carlos's grip tightened on my arm, but not to steady me, to control me. Mom, careful, he said. But his voice had changed. The concern was gone. What remained was cold, clinical, the voice of someone doing a job. We reached the landing, just 4 more steps to the top, to the place where I would fall. I think I need to sit down, I said, my voice weak. Just a few more steps, Mom, Carlos urged. Your bedroom is right, there. But we weren't going to my bedroom. We were going to stop at the top of the stairs. And then I was going to feel hands on my back, a push, and I was going to fall. Except I wasn't going to fall, because I wasn't actually drugged, because the police were outside, because Ernesto was in the attic, because this was a trap, and my sons had walked right into it. We reached the top step. Carlos's hand moved from my arm to my back. I felt pressure. Not a push yet, just preparation. Testing. Positioning. This was it. I opened my mouth to say the safe word, Ricardo. But before I could speak, Carlos shoved me hard. I wasn't prepared. Despite knowing it was coming, despite bracing myself, the force caught me off guard. I pitched forward, arms flailing, gravity taking over. For one terrible moment, I was actually falling down the stairs, not acting, not pretending, but genuinely falling toward the hardwood floor 12 steps below. Then hands caught me, not Carlos's hands, not Henrique's hands. Strong hands, unfamiliar hands. Detective Sarah Chen appeared out of nowhere, her body between me and the stairs, absorbing my momentum, stopping my fall. Behind her, Officer Marcus Rodriguez thundered up the stairs, weapon drawn. Freeze! Atlanta police! Hands up! The front door crashed open. Robert Keller came through, followed by two more uniformed officers. From the attic access panel in the hallway, Ernesto dropped down. My husband, alive, in front of our sons who'd tried to kill him. Carlos's face went white, actually white, like every drop of blood had drained from his body in an instant. No, he whispered. No, you're dead. You're buried. No, Ernesto said, his voice hard as granite. I'm alive, and you're finished. Henrique made a sound like a wounded animal. He backed away from Rodriguez's gun, hands up, tears streaming down his face. Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't want to. Carlos made me. Please, I'm sorry. Save it, Detective Chen said coldly. She still had one arm around me, steadying me. With her free hand, she pulled out handcuffs. Carlos Martinez, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and forgery. You have the right to remain silent. This is insane, Carlos shouted. She fell. She was drunk. We were trying to help her. We have video, Keller said, holding up a tablet. On the screen, I could see myself from the camera on my brooch. The angle showed Carlos's hand on my back clearly. Showed the deliberate push. Showed the calculation in his eyes. We have audio of you planning this murder via text message. We have evidence of you poisoning your father's medication. And we have evidence of you murdering your brother Ricardo, 25. Years ago, Carlos's face changed. The mask of civilized humanity cracked and fell away. What remained was something cold and reptilian. Prove it, he hissed. You can't prove any of it. Ernesto stepped forward. From his pocket, he pulled a small black device, a tape recorder, old-fashioned, from 1999. December 14th, 1999. Ernesto said, 2 nights before Ricardo died, I recorded this conversation between you and Tommy Alvarez in the garage. I've had it for 25 years. I've been carrying it like a cancer, but now I'm cutting it out. He pressed play, static. Then voices, young voices. 13-year-old Carlos and 13-year-old Tommy. Carlos. He's going to tell them about the money, about what I did. Tommy. So what? You'll get grounded. Big deal. Carlos. It's not just grounding. It's $3,000. That's felony theft. They'll send me to juvie. My life will be over. Tommy. So, what are you going to do? Silence. Then Carlos's voice, quiet and cold. I'm going to make sure he can't tell anyone. I'm going to cut his brake lines, make it look like an accident. Drunk teenager crashes his car. Tragic. But accidents happen. Tommy. Dude, you can't be serious. Carlos. I'm completely serious. And if you tell anyone, Tommy, if you breathe a word of this to anyone ever, I'll do the same thing to you. Are we clear? Tommy, terrified. Yeah, we're clear. The recording stopped. The hallway was silent except for Henrique's sobbing. Carlos didn't cry, didn't beg. He just stared at his father with pure hatred. You knew, Carlos said. For 25 years you knew, and you did nothing. You let me live my life. You paid for my education. You came to my wedding. You did nothing. I know, Ernesto said quietly. And that was my sin. I chose you over Ricardo. I chose protecting. A murderer over honoring a victim. I told myself you were a child, that you could change, that love could fix you. I was wrong, and I've spent 25 years drowning in that mistake. But I'm not drowning anymore. I'm breathing, and I'm watching you pay for what you've done. Detective Chen finished cuffing Carlos. Officer Rodriguez cuffed Henrique, who was still crying, still claiming it wasn't his fault, still begging me to believe he was sorry. I looked at my younger son, at his tears, at his fear, and I felt nothing. You stood there and watched him push me, I said. You didn't stop him. You didn't warn me. You were his accomplice. So no, Henrique, I don't forgive you. I don't believe you're sorry. I believe you're sorry you got caught. They led my sons down the stairs, through the living room where we'd celebrated so many Christmases, past the dining room where we'd shared so many meals, out the front door into a night filled with flashing blue and red lights. Neighbors stood on their porches watching. Mrs. Chen from next door. The Williamson family from across the street. All of them witnessing the Martinez family's final destruction. I stood in the doorway with Ernesto beside me, watching my sons get loaded into separate police cars. Carlos never looked back, but Henrique did. One last time. His face pressed against the car window, tears streaming, mouth moving. Mom, I'm sorry. The cars drove away. Detective Chen approached us, tablet in hand. We need you both to come to the station. Give full statements. It'll take a few hours. Of course, Ernesto said. But before we left, I went back upstairs to my bedroom. Sat on the edge of the bed where I'd slept next to Ernesto for 42 years, where we'd made love and fought and dreamed and lied. I pulled out my phone, opened the photos, found one from 1999, Ricardo's senior portrait. He was 17, smiling, full of hope and life and futures that would never happen. We got them, I whispered to the photo. We finally got them. You can rest now. Downstairs, Ernesto was waiting. We drove to the police station in separate cars, gave separate statements, answered hundreds of questions. At 2:30 a.m., Detective Chen told us we could go home. The DA will be in touch, she said. This is going to be a major case, multiple charges, 2 defendants, historical evidence. It'll take months to go to trial. But Mrs. Martinez, Mr. Martinez, I want you to know they're not getting bail. Not with attempted murder and flight risk. They'll stay in Fulton County Jail until trial. And based on the evidence, they're looking at 25 years to life. Both of them. 25 years to life. The same amount of time Ricardo had been dead. The mathematics of justice finally balancing. March 22nd, 2025. 3 months after the night my sons tried to kill me. I stood in the kitchen of our new apartment in Denver, Colorado, watching snow fall outside the window. Fat white flakes drifting down from a gray sky, covering the mountains in the distance like a blanket. So different from Atlanta, so far from everything we'd known. My hair was shorter now, cut to my shoulders in soft layers that framed my face. The gray I'd been covering with dye for 15 years was growing out naturally, silver threads mixing with dark brown. I'd bought new glasses too, modern frames in tortoiseshell instead of the wire-rimmed ones I'd worn forever. And I'd gained back the 12 pounds I'd lost during those terrible weeks in December. I looked different. I felt different. Ernesto came. Up behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist. He'd shaved the beard, but kept his hair longer. He looked younger somehow, despite everything. Or maybe not younger, maybe just unburdened. Coffee? He asked. Please. He poured 2 cups from the French press we'd bought at a little shop in Capitol Hill. Real coffee, strong and black, nothing like the watery drip coffee we'd made in Atlanta. Everything was different here. The apartment was smaller, just 2 bedrooms on the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse. We'd sold the house on Argonne Avenue for $435,000, split the money with my sister Rosa, who'd helped us through everything. The furniture was new, bought from IKEA and a local vintage store. Nothing from our old life except photographs and books. We were starting over. At 66 and 67 years old, we were starting completely over. "Did you hear from Detective Chen?" I asked. Ernesto nodded, sitting down at our small kitchen table. "The trial date is set, June 15th, 3 months from now. She says the DA is confident. The evidence is overwhelming. The evidence, hours of recordings, video footage, text, messages, bank statements, and most damning of all, that tape from 1999, 25-year-old proof that Carlos had planned Ricardo's murder. What are they charging them with?" Carlos is facing 15 counts. First-degree murder for Ricardo, conspiracy and attempted murder for me and you, insurance fraud, forgery. If convicted on all counts, he's looking at life without parole. Henrique has 7 counts, mostly conspiracy and attempted murder. His lawyer is trying to argue diminished capacity, that Carlos manipulated him. But the prosecutor says the text messages show he was a willing participant. He's looking at 25 to 30 years minimum. 25 to 30 years. Henrique would be 60 years old when he got out, if he got out. Carlos would die in prison. I should have felt something. Grief, regret, some maternal instinct screaming that these were my children, my babies, the boys I'd nursed and raised and loved. But I felt nothing except relief. Sandra divorced Carlos, Ernesto continued. Filed the papers 2 weeks after the arrest. She's writing a book about it, apparently. My Husband the Murderer, or something like that. And Tommy Alvarez, Carlos's friend from middle school, he's been doing interviews. Says he's lived with the guilt for 25 years, that he's glad the truth finally came out. Good for Tommy, I said. And I meant it. Tommy had been 13 years old, terrorized by Carlos, forced to keep a secret that poisoned him for a quarter century. He deserved peace. We all deserved peace. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Rosa, thinking. About you today. Love you, Hermana. Today. March 22nd. Ricardo's birthday. He would have been 42 years old today. A doctor, probably. Maybe married. Maybe children of his own. A whole life that had been stolen from him at 17. I'm going to the cemetery this afternoon, I told Ernesto. Do you want to come? He shook his head. I went yesterday. Spent 2 hours there. Told him everything. About the trial. About Carlos and Henrique. I think he would have liked Denver. The mountains. The snow. He always talked about skiing. He did, I agreed. Every winter he'd beg us to take him to Colorado. And we always said, next year, next year. But next year never came. We sat in silence for a while, drinking our coffee, watching the snow fall. Finally, Ernesto said, I talked to Dr. Chen yesterday too. My old friend who signed the death certificate. The medical board suspended his license for 6 months and fined him $50,000. But they didn't revoke it permanently. He can practice again in August. That's good. He was helping you save my life. The punishment seems harsh. He falsified official documents. There had to be consequences. Ernesto paused. I had consequences too. The DA gave me immunity for testifying, but I still had to pay a $25,000 fine for filing false documents. And I'm on probation for 2 years. If I break any law, even a minor one, I go to jail. That seems fair. It is fair. More than fair. I should be in prison for what? I did. For letting Ricardo's murder go unpunished for 25 years. For letting Carlos become the monster I knew he was. I'm lucky that all I got was a fine and probation. I reached across the table and took his hand. You're not lucky. You're forgiven. By me. By the law. Maybe someday by yourself. His eyes filled with tears. I don't know if I can forgive myself. Try, please, because I need you. Not the man you were, carrying 25 years of secrets, but the man you are now, the man who risked everything to stop them. That man, I want to spend the rest of my life with. He squeezed my hand. Do you mean that? After everything I put You through? After all the lies, you actually want to stay married to me? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Did I love Ernesto the way I had when we were young? When we sat on that bench in Piedmont Park 42 years ago and believed love conquered everything? No. That love was dead. Buried under decades of secrets and pain. But there was something new growing in its place. Something harder and more honest. A love built not on illusions, but on truth. On shared trauma and shared purpose. On the knowledge that we'd both failed and both fought to make it right. Yes, I said. I want to stay married to you. But it's different now. We're different now. I know. And that's okay. Better than okay. At 2 p.m., I drove to Fort Logan National Cemetery, where we'd had Ricardo's body transferred from Atlanta. The drive took 40 minutes through snowy streets. The cemetery was quiet, peaceful, rows of white headstones stretching across pristine snow. Ricardo's grave was in Section 32, Plot 1847. The headstone was new, paid for with money from the sale of the Atlanta house. Ricardo Javier Martinez, 1982. 1999, beloved son and brother truth. Delayed is not truth denied. I'd written that epitaph myself. Truth delayed is not truth denied. Because it took 25 years, but the truth had finally emerged. Justice had finally come. I sat in the snow beside his grave, not caring that my jeans got wet, and talked to my son. Hey baby, it's Mom. Happy birthday. You're 42 today. Can you believe that? 42. You'd probably have gray hair like me by now. Maybe reading glasses. Maybe a dad belly from too much good food. The wind blew snow across the headstone. I brushed it away. We got them. Carlos and Henrique. They're going to prison for what they did to you, for what they tried to do to Dad and me. The trial is in 3 months. I'm going to testify. I'm going to tell the jury about you, about what a good kid you were, about how you wanted to be a doctor and help people. And then I'm going to watch your brothers go to prison for the rest of their lives. Tears froze on my cheeks. I'm sorry, Ricardo. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry I didn't know. I'm sorry I mourned you at Christmas and birthdays while Carlos sat across from me pretending to grieve the brother he murdered. I'm sorry for all of it. I stayed there for an hour, talking and crying and making promises to a son who couldn't hear me, but maybe somehow knew. When I finally drove home, Ernesto had dinner ready. Chicken enchiladas, my favorite, made from a recipe he'd found online. We ate together in our new kitchen in our new city, and for the first time in 25 years, there were no secrets between us. After dinner, we sat on the small balcony, wrapped in blankets, watching the city lights come on as darkness fell. What do we do now? Ernesto asked. After the trial, after it's all finished, what do we do? We live, I said simply. We find new friends. We volunteer somewhere, maybe a literacy program or a soup kitchen. We take that trip to Italy we always talked about. We read books and drink coffee and watch the seasons change. We do all the normal things people do when they're not carrying the weight of murdered children and secrets and lies. That sounds nice. It does, doesn't it? We sat in silence, holding hands, breathing the cold Colorado air. Below us, Denver spread out in a grid of lights. Thousands of people living their lives, facing their own struggles, carrying their own burdens. Somewhere in that city, there, were other families torn apart by violence and lies. Other parents wondering how their children became strangers. Other secrets waiting to emerge into the light. But up here, on this balcony, in this moment, there was just us. 2 old people who'd survived the worst thing parents can face and come out the other side changed but alive. My phone buzzed one more time. A news alert. Martinez brothers denied bail in attempted murder case. Trial set for June. Prosecutor seeks maximum sentences. I showed it to Ernesto. He read it and nodded. Good, he said simply. That's good. I thought about Carlos, sitting in a cell in Fulton County Jail. I thought about Henrique, probably crying, probably still claiming he didn't mean it, probably begging for forgiveness he would never receive. And I thought about Ricardo, 17 forever, but finally honored, finally avenged, finally at peace. You know what I learned through all of this? I said to Ernesto. Family isn't blood. Family isn't genetics. Family is the people who see you at your absolute worst and still choose to stand beside you. Rosa is family. Detective Chen is family. Even Robert Keller is more family than Carlos and Henrique ever were, because they helped us survive. They helped us fight back. They helped us find justice. And each other? Ernesto asked quietly. Are we still family? I looked at my husband, of 42 years. This man who'd lied to me, hidden from me, manipulated me into being bait for a trap. This man who'd also saved my life, exposed our son's evil, and fought for justice even when it cost him everything. Yes, I said, we're still family, a different family than we were, a smaller family, a scarred family, but family nonetheless. He kissed my forehead. I'll take it. I'll take whatever you're willing to give me, Gloria, because I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I definitely don't deserve your love, but I'm grateful for both. We went inside when the cold became too much, made tea, watched a movie on our laptop, something light and forgettable. At 11 p.m., we went to bed in our small Denver apartment, 1,500 miles from Atlanta, from our old life, from the graves and the lies and the sons who'd become monsters. And for the first time in 25 years, Ernesto slept without nightmares. For the first time in 3 months, I slept without fear. We slept like people who'd been to war and survived, because we had. And we would keep surviving, one day at a time, one truth at a time, one breath at a time, until the trial, until justice, until finally we could close the sea, book on the Martinez family tragedy, and write a new story. A story about 2 old people who refused to let evil win. A story about resurrection after death, truth after lies, peace after war. A story that would end not with a funeral, but with a sunrise over the Colorado mountains, lighting up a world that was broken but still beautiful, damaged but still worth living in. They thought we were weak. They thought we were old and foolish and easy to destroy. They were wrong, and they would spend the rest of their lives knowing exactly how wrong they were. Some families don't survive, but some families are reborn, and we were one of the lucky ones. Not because we avoided tragedy, but because we faced it, fought through it, and came out the other side still holding hands, still breathing, still alive.